cannot win if you quit. I have this kind of response to people who are trying to get going with a podcast. And the very last line of that email that I send to everybody is, don't quit, everybody does. Because you have no chance to succeed or to win, and whatever your definition of winning is, if you quit. And that sounds like the most basic advice of all time. But yet, it's so true. And yet, of all those hundreds of people I've helped start podcasts and launch them and go, 95% of them have quit because it's hard. They're not getting the audience they wanted. It's not growing like they thought. They can't get the guests or whatever. There's a various myriad of reasons as to why people quit, but everyone has good excuses for it. So whatever the thing is, if you love it, if you want to do it, if you're obsessed with it, if you want to chase down that curiosity and obsession with great rigor, you got to stay in the game. If you don't, you have no chance of winning the game. And so I hope that that's a story that inspires people to keep sticking with it, even when it gets really, really hard, because it's guaranteed it's going to, but how are you going to respond when it does? And that's going to be the biggest difference.
Welcome to Leadership, the podcast where leadership meets real-world insights. In each episode, you can eavesdrop on exclusive conversations with top thought leaders, best-selling authors, and experts in leadership, communication, relationships, culture, and everything else that shapes your effectiveness in the workplace and in your personal life. Leadership is here for you. Now, here's our host, himself a seasoned coach and best-selling author, Dr. Roger Dean Duncan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership, where we dig into the principles, practices, and mindsets that help good leaders become great leaders. My guest for this episode has spent more than a decade studying excellence, not from the cheap seats, but from thousands of hours of deep, one-on-one conversations with the world's most impactful leaders, thinkers, and performers. Ryan Hawk is host of the Learning Leader Show, ranked as the #1 business podcast in the world. He's delivered hundreds of keynote speeches on leadership and high performance. He leads exclusive leadership circles and founded the Learning Leader Academy. Before building this platform, Ryan spent more than a decade in corporate America, rising from an entry-level sales rep to vice president at a global information and analytics company. So he knows what it takes to perform at every level of an organization. He also played professional football in the Arena Football League. And in a classic sports irony, the quarterback competing against him in college for the starting job went on to win 2 Super Bowls and will be a shoo-in for induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That detour and what Ryan did with it tells you everything you need to know about how he navigates through life. Drawing from more than 700 of his conversations with people such as Jim Collins, Simon Sinek, Adam Grant, Tony Robbins, and General Stanley McChrystal, Ryan has distilled years of learning into his latest book. It's titled The Price of Becoming: The Compounding Practices of High Performance. Ryan challenges the seductive myth that excellence is the result of talent or luck. Instead, he argues that growth always comes with a cost, and that the people who consistently thrive are the ones willing to pay that price through curiosity, discipline, intentional relationships, courageous action, and a lifelong commitment to learning. So let's explore what it really means to become the best version of yourself, why comfort can be the enemy of growth, and how small daily actions can compound into extraordinary results. Ryan Hawk, welcome to Leadership.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that introduction. It means a lot to me that you take the time to write all that. So I'm excited to be with you.
Well, we're happy to have you. Let's start with this. You write about the Beatles, some guys who spent years as a cover band before finding their own voice. What does that story teach us about the imitate, then innovate principle? And why do so many ambitious people skip that first step?
Quite frankly, this is part of the fun of writing a book, is doing all the research. I had no idea that the Beatles started as a cover band. I would have never guessed that. My friend Todd Henry told me many years ago that cover bands don't change the world. You can live a nice life, you can do okay covering other people's stuff, but you'll never truly really make it until you come up with your own voice. He was giving me advice because in my earlier days, I was just basically repeating stuff from everybody else instead of thinking from my own perspective. So I think to me, it's inspiring. If you think of like the greatest band or one of the greatest bands of all time, still did not have the confidence to sing their own songs, even though they had written them and they'd even practice and perform them in private. But when they would go out for those long marathon sessions over in Europe, initially for the first year or so, they're just covering other people's songs. And so when David Perell came on my podcast and said, imitate, then innovate, I thought that really rung true and did a lot of deep research and worked with a research assistant to learn about the Beatles. So that's why I shared that story in the book. It was just simply, if they did it, well then, like literally any of us should consider doing that. And how I applied that to my own life initially as a sales rep is I would literally sit in the cubicles of my teammates. I would listen to their calls. I would take notes and write down what they were saying verbatim and then literally repeat exactly what they were saying when I got on the phone. And eventually I kind of got more comfortable and mashed together my personality with what I learned from others and came up with my own voice, my own style. But it took time, it took repetition, it took effort. And I think imitating others can be a good way to start. And then as you progress, you start figuring out and finding your own voice.
And that principle applies to virtually anything.
Everything. Quarterback play, I mean, growing up, I live here in southwestern Ohio. Boomer Esiason was a quarterback that we looked up to, and he was known as being a great play-action faker. And as a quarterback, you don't get to block anybody, but my dad would always push this on me of, this is another way that you could block. You could be a great play-action faker. And so I would mimic and copy the great play-action fakers like Boomer Esiason, like Peyton Manning, like Aaron Rodgers, these others who are really, really good and understood the value of that. So like I would mimic them exactly the way they did it and then figure out how to then make it my own version of a play action faking, just as another example in life. So you can do this in virtually anything in the world of imitating and then innovating.
You know, there could be some young quarterback out there now saying, I'm going to do it like Ryan Hawk did it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I took it as a massive compliment when people who watched me play would say, oh, yeah, that's the guy that has all of the great ball fakes. That's the good play action passer. That's the guy who I never knew where the ball was. I mean, that's how I try to help my teammates. I don't physically really block people, but I can block them in other ways, which is making the defender confused of where is the ball? This quarterback seems to focus. And so I was constantly focusing on handling a ball and faking and all the stuff that I would watch other people do. So that was a way of doing that. I did that in my professional life. When I started a podcast, I was imitating other interviewers who I thought were really, really good and then finding my own voice. So I think literally, like you said, this applies to anything that you do in your life.
Yeah. Well, let's stay with sports just a minute. Let's talk about hockey great Wayne Gretzky. He didn't try to fix his size disadvantage. He made it irrelevant by creating Gretzky's office behind the net. If you would, share that story with us, then explain how you help leaders identify their own version of that office, the space others ignore when they can actually dominate.
Yeah, I didn't know this either. So there's another thing that I found in the research. Even though I'm a sports guy, I didn't watch a ton of hockey. I know who Wayne Gretzky is, but I don't know a lot about his style of play. I didn't even know he was technically undersized.
Yeah.
But he would sit there as a kid and he would watch on TV. His dad told stories about this, and he would take handwritten notes about how other players played. And he found that the back of the net, behind the net, again, I'm an amateur when it comes to hockey, so hockey players know this better than me, but he would find that this could be a space that he could operate in, and that's why it was called Gretzky's office. And so instead of saying, well, I got to bulk up or somehow get bigger, he'd use his size to maneuver and use positioning on the ice as a way for his advantage. And so whatever that may be, maybe you're not gifted to be 7 foot tall, or how could you utilize your size or lack thereof to your advantage? I think instead of people thinking like, oh my goodness, I wish I was born with this, or I wish I was born with that. Well, think about what were you born with, or what do you currently have? What could you be more grateful for what you have? And thinking of a way to use that to your advantage instead of just complaining or not having high agency in your life to say, well, I would do it if I had this. Well, you got to work with what you got. And so to me, the purpose of sharing that story was hopefully inspiring others to not be a complainer or not having a victim mentality mindset, but saying, let's say, what do I have? What can I be grateful for? How can I make the most of that? Again, in whatever area of life you're trying to do it. I think that example is not as tactical as some of the others I share in the book, because it's more of an inspirational thing of saying, hey, he wasn't born with the size or the strength or the height that he wanted, and yet he retired as the greatest hockey player of all time.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more we can do with it if we approach it in the right way, like Wayne Gretzky did.
He had imagination.
Exactly.
Well, you discuss self-belief as potentially a prison or a source of potential. You share the story of Cliff Young. I love this story. He showed up to a 543-mile ultra marathon wearing overalls and work boots, and he won, partly because he didn't know what was impossible. How do we audit our mental barriers, and how can people distinguish between a limiting belief and a legitimate constraint?
I think being naive can be helpful at
Yeah.
times. In Cliff's case, he was quite naive. He didn't really study the way you were supposed to do it. He just did it how he thought would be best. So in the case of winning that race, he just didn't sleep. Now, it was very taxing and tiring, but others would take breaks and would sleep, thinking that's the most optimal way to go about running the race. And in his case, he thought, well, I'm just going to keep going. And so in a way, it's approaching things with a rookie mindset, with a beginner's mindset of not being afraid to look stupid. I think that can be really useful. It's even with like starting a podcast or starting a business. Sometimes it's useful to not really like understand how crazy or stupid it is. Just do it. I talk to my brother a lot about this when we played football, and he played in front of lots of people. And he's like, now that I go to games and watch them, like I realize how big it is and how crazy it is and how important it is to all these fans. When I was playing, I thought I was just like out there kind of having fun with my buddies. I never thought about the craziness of the magnitude of the spectacle of what it was. I just went out and played. And I think I like that kind of mentality of whatever it is we're going to do, of finding a way to just let it rip, finding a way to just go out there and be loose and play. If you get too uptight about thinking about, oh, this is the proper way to do this thing, or this is expected of me to do it this way, I think that could be limiting versus saying, how can I go out there and just let it rip? Like, what can I do to be like we talked about Patrick Mahomes. Like Patrick Mahomes, when you watch him play, he looks like the kids at recess.
Yeah.
But he's doing it in the NFL. And I think he's influencing a lot of the younger generation to play the actual game of football like you played at recess, where you're running around, you're making crazy plays. Sometimes you're holding onto the ball for too long, and sometimes it doesn't work, but a lot of times it does. So I think, like, how can you take that approach to whatever it is that you're doing of just letting it rip? I think of this when it comes to keynote speaking of, wait, I'm supposed to look and sound this way, or open this way, or close this way, as opposed to saying, no, let me turn this into a conversation with a big group of people where it's going to be super interactive, even in a room with 1,000 people. I remember I do these offsites with like 12 leaders. And what worked really well was making it super interactive, them being involved. And I remember I had a speech in front of 1,000 people coming up, and I was prepping for it with my wife. She's the first person who helps me with everything. And I said, God, I wish I could just do it like I did that workshop last week when I was at the leadership offsite with 12 people. And she said, well, why don't you just try that? I go, well, it's 1,000 people. I can't do it with 1,000 people. And she said, well, why not? Why not just try it? Like, yeah, you're not going to get to all 1,000 people as far as the interaction, but you can get to some of them. And so I thought, yeah, why not? Like, if it goes wrong, like, okay, we'll move on to the next one. And I did that and made it super interactive and engaged with some of the people in the audience. And now that's the way we do it every time, regardless of audience size. So it was just kind of like, why not? Why not like give it a go? Why not give it a shot? There's no rule, or if there is a rule, like let's try breaking them every once in a while. You never really know. And I think to me, I think you just got to be willing to kind of let it rip sometimes, knowing that, yeah, it's not going to work every time. But I think that's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you try to get better.
Well, I understand that one year you chose the word connection as your word of the year, and you just illustrated that.
Yeah, connection was my word of the year last year. And I honestly, like my friend Garen Stokes wanted to do this word of the year thing. And I go, I've seen the kind of online guys who do that. That seems woo-woo, like they're trying to sell a course or something. I don't know if I buy that. But I go, but he's like, trust me, it actually like seriously works if you commit to it. And I thought, all right. And so I said connection because I thought I wanted to really focus on relationships and being in person with people. And because of that, like I booked a family ski trip to start the year, January 1st. We're in Utah skiing as a family. And then I booked an Airbnb in Scottsdale and got 12 guys together to do this kind of guys who are leaders. And we had dinners and did hikes. And literally the word connection said, well, how can I connect? How can I connect? How can I connect? It's because I wanted to follow through on the commitment that I'd made to myself that there was going to be the year of connection. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're willing to follow through, if you're willing to commit, like that, what I thought again was kind of the woo-woo stuff can actually work. It can be useful.
Sure.
And so that's why I like it. And now I'm going to continue doing it every year.
Well, now you talk about a woman named Donna Dubinsky who stood up to Steve Jobs at Apple. She risked her career to protect what she knew was right for the company. If you would share that story with us and explain what it says about the importance of speaking up and taking responsibility for one's expertise.
Yeah, Donna Dubinsky worked in the early days at Apple, and Steve Jobs wanted to change essentially like how the computers were put together.
He was probably pretty hard to stand up to.
Well, I mean, as hard as it gets. Literally probably one of the hardest people in the world to stand up to because like he's a visionary and had these ideas and was very demanding and had reality distortion type of a mindset, similar to like Elon Musk has today. Could be very tough to stand up to, but what he was proposing them doing, Donna had realized like with facts and with data that it simply would not work and would potentially put Apple out of business. And so she showed him a better way to do it, but then still had the guts to present that to him and then go and execute on that. And so she proposed, I think what you're saying is wrong and will potentially put us out of business. Here is a solution to the problem and I think could work. By the way, if it doesn't work, I will resign. And so she put her money where her mouth was. She put her career on the line for the benefit of the company. And it did work. It did save the company. The company grew like crazy and she got promoted multiple times that eventually would leave to start her own companies from all the stuff that she learned at Apple. And so the reason of sharing the Donna Dubinsky story is one, we all need the Donna Dubinskys in our life. We need people at our companies who are willing to be like Donna Dubinsky. We want to be Donna Dubinsky at our place of work if we figure out like this is actually going to hurt us and I've solved this tough problem. I got to present it and have the guts to stand up and say this is the way to do it. So again, inspirational, more mindset shifting. How can you find the issues within your company and solve them and then have the guts to speak up to a very powerful person? Or if you are that powerful person at your company, creating an environment where Donna Dubinsky can thrive, where she can grow, where she can speak up, where it's safe to do that. You applaud those people. You honor the standard bearers that are willing to do that. That's also a part of the story that I think is helpful to learn. So you hit it from both sides of being that person as well as being the person in power.
Sure, you need to make it safe to speak up. Well, now you point out that small habits multiply over time in ways that are hard to see in the moment. Tell us about Katherine Johnson and how she questioned everything, even data that other NASA computers simply accepted. What's the difference between healthy skepticism and the kind of institutional friction that slows organizations down? And how do leaders cultivate that?
Yeah, well, I mean, now that story has been made famous in the movie called Hidden Figures. Oh, it's a great movie, by the way. But Katherine Johnson's story is super inspirational because from a young age, she was very bright, but her parents and her also leaned into that. She's also very curious. She was always asking questions. She was always counting things. And she became doing this day after day after day of being curious, of counting things, helped develop her skill to, as she then grows up and goes and works for NASA, that John Glenn himself said, I will not go into space until this one person has double checked everything. It's pretty wild to think about that. Like he had that much trust because, I mean, his life is literally on the line. He's going up very unknown times. It wasn't as safe as it is today. And it's still a great challenge to leave our atmosphere and go into space, but it was especially challenging and hard then. And he said, you're going to be the one to do that. So I think, again, you want to build an environment where the Katherine Johnsons of the world can excel, where they're encouraged, where they're empowered to do their best possible work. I think skeptics are okay. It's funny, like when we get brought in to work with leadership teams, and it's part of the work our team of coaches do, there's always a skeptic or two in the bunch. If we work with an executive team of 10 to 12 people, there's always at least one or two skeptics that are in that group that are unsure of, is this even worth it? Is this good? We've done stuff like this before and it hasn't been that good. So I kind of like skeptics because they become your champion. So whenever we come across skeptics, we lean into that. We don't treat them special or any different than anybody else, but we enjoy working with them too, because in my experience, every time we've come across a skeptic and then we show them what we do and how it impacts people, how it helps them and how it ultimately helps a company, they become our biggest cheerleaders and our champions. So I think skepticism's good. I'm a skeptic at times. I think, I want to learn and I want to grow. And so sometimes that takes a little bit of work for people to prove that they have the chops. And to me, you already mentioned in the intro of my story of losing out of this quarterback job. Like I learned that at a very young age. If you're not adding a ton of value to other people, then they're going to choose somebody else. And so in my case, like I'm thinking about that every single day of what are we doing to add value to other people's lives? Because if we don't do that, then we don't deserve to be in their lives. And some people think that's harsh, but that's how I choose to approach my marriage or approach any of my relationships. And certainly how we approach our work is, are we earning it every single day? And if we're not, then they're going to get rid of us, and that's what they should do. So yeah, I feel like that mindset has served me well.
Well, we need to challenge the status quo. Even if the status quo is good, we need to see if we can make it better.
Yeah.
Well, you write about Charlie Munger. I loved watching Charlie Munger over the years. He was, of course, the longtime partner and intellectual counterpart to investor and philanthropist Warren Buffett. Charlie had 3 rules that you write about. Read constantly, learn from others' mistakes more than your own, and know the perimeter of your circle of competence. Which of those 3 do you think is most neglected by leaders today, and why?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think Charlie's mentality of going to bed a little bit wiser than you were when you woke up, that's literally like the whole ethos of this book, or how I try to live my life. If you stack enough days of going to bed a little bit wiser than you were when you woke up, and let's say at the end of each day, you simply write down what you did during that day to go to bed a little bit wiser than you were when you woke up, and you stacked day after day after day for years, I'm going to bet on you. I like your chances of making a positive dent in the world. And so I'm not sure which ones leaders don't do, but when I ask people that, not many people jot down what they did that day to go to bed a little bit wiser. And again, I push all the leaders I work with to do that. It doesn't take very long, but it does then create a forcing function in your mind to say, what am I doing today? Am I wasting the day away? And so, yeah, I like the idea of writing. I like the idea of documenting your days. I like the idea of taking like a little bit of a look back and saying, what did I do? Because it also then, again, makes you think about the next day of what am I going to do to go to bed wiser? Like what positions am I going to put myself in? Who am I going to talk to? What am I going to read? What podcast am I going to listen to? Like what am I intentionally doing to go to bed a little better? Again, if every leader did that and they stacked day after day after day, I like their chances of their life going well. I like their chances of their career going well, of really everything, if they're thinking like that.
It's living more mindfully and holding yourself accountable.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you also write about Aaron Sorkin. I love his work. West Wing was one of my all-time favorites. Mm-hmm. He's, of course, the celebrated screenwriter and director, and he says that he worships at the altar of intention and obstacle. If obstacles are the arena where real performance happens, as you suggest, Why do organizations spend so much energy eliminating friction and difficulty rather than embracing it?
Do you think they do?
I think some of them do. Some leaders certainly do.
Well, I mean, there's always challenges. We work with people, and people are messy humans who have a lot that they're bringing to the table every single day. So I think maybe it's more of a mindset shift of understanding that like obstacles and the messiness of people, that's just the way the world is, and let's embrace it and go to work through it. We just went on a family trip and we were having a conversation about confidence with my daughters. And I just like to pose questions and see what they say. And one of the questions we pose is, how do you build confidence? Like, how do you become a more confident person? And there weren't like a ton of good answers. And I said, let me simplify this as much as possible for all of them. I said, how do you gain confidence for this one day? Do something hard. Do something hard. And so whether that's go to the workout, like this morning, my daughter sent me the picture of my wife and them at this really tough workout class, like confidence gained today, right? And so it's like, wow, one, I'm glad the message somehow stuck, which they don't usually do as a dad. But two, that it actually worked. I mean, we went to, my wife texted me, that class was hard, like in all caps, and of saying how hard it was. And then the girl sending the picture of like, this is the way it is. So to me, it's like thinking of ways to create confidence for yourself. And that's what obstacles within organizations are of, hey, this is an opportunity to create some confidence today that we can do hard things. How? Well, because we can point back and look at all of the hard things we've done so that when the next one comes, we're ready for it, or we're better prepared for that. And so whether it's a take the stairs mentality, which is an ethos I like to use, right? If you have the escalator and the stairs, just take the stairs. It's not really that much harder, but it's a little bit harder than just standing there. And so whatever it is of how do you like implement an ethos of we do hard things, we can handle the tough moments that are going to arise. There aren't a ton of guarantees in life, but one of them is that adversity will strike, and it will strike a lot. I don't know when, I don't know where, I don't know how, but I do know it's coming, and I want to be as prepared as possible to deal with it and to handle it well and to work through it. And so one of the ways to do that is to regularly create those points of friction for yourself, both physically and mentally. And I think if you do, you'll be better prepared to handle it when the inevitable adversity strikes.
Kind of reminds me of my grandfather who said, yard by yard, it's hard, but inch by inch, it's a cinch.
I like that.
Just
I like that.
Take it a little at a time, and you can do it, and you'll be surprised. And then, as you suggest, you can look back and say, well, that was hard, but I managed. I bet I can manage this too.
Exactly. I think that's what confidence is, right? It's you can point back to moments where, hey, we've done this before. Maybe not this exact thing, but we've done a version of this before. The mantra in my head before I go up on stage for keynotes, especially if I'm like more nervous or whatever, is what a great opportunity to create some evidence today. Confidence needs evidence, right?
Yeah.
Like confidence without evidence is delusion. And so you need some sort of evidence for yourself. And you got to be creating that evidence at all times. And so when you face one of those challenging or scary things, have some way that you get ready for it. And so to me, what a great opportunity to create some evidence today. And then you're like, all right, let's go. And so whatever it is for you, I think it's important that people think about that and you be really intentional about it.
Yeah. You reminded me of my family now. My dad did a lot of keynote speaking. And I asked him one time, do you ever get butterflies? And he said, sure. I just teach them to fly in formation. Nothing wrong with butterflies. You got a little energy going there.
Well, I mean, too, if you didn't get that, I would be a little concerned. I mean, I don't want to ever get too comfortable. I mean, I get nervous for my podcast. I get nervous for speaking. Not like nervous, but it's like that anticipatory feeling before a game.
Yep. Got to get up for the game. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're kind of like, all right, you got that. I think that's what life's all about is I want to always have those moments coming up. I want to have those big things on the calendar to get ready for. I think my wife and I have really got into hiking, and I think it's different, but it's still like this idea. We love doing these challenging things together to get up for it, to be in shape for that, and then to, celebrate the peaks and then go to a great dinner afterwards. Like I don't know, it's like the juice of life is finding the hard things and then going after them and trying to do a really good job. I think that's a lot of fun.
Sure.
Your change initiative has the budget. The strategy looks solid, and everyone's nodding along in the meetings. But for some reason, it's going nowhere. Dr. Roger Dean Duncan knows why. After 40 years in the trenches with top business leaders, He knows that change fails when organizations lack the right foundations: trust, accountability, and real communication. Dr. Duncan's free 10-minute assessment shows you exactly where your organization stands. Answer a few straightforward questions that reveal your true change readiness level. Don't waste months discovering the hard way. Get your free assessment today at leadershop.net/change. Again, that's leadershop.net/change.
Let's go to another story you share. You talk about tennis great Roger Federer. He won 54% of his points over his career. That's it, 54%. So what does the 54% rule mean for how leaders should think about failure, and how does it reframe what it means to be truly excellent?
One of the greatest of all time, won a ton of Grand Slams, won a ton of matches, won a lot. And yet, if you look at the actual points within the matches that he played, he only won 54%. Now, he shared that in a commencement speech, and that I thought there's no way that that's accurate, but it was a beautiful message to let all those graduating students know that he still lost all the time.
Yeah.
Constantly. This is why I love, one of my daughters was really big into volleyball. She just graduated high school and is going to college. I was a PA announcer for her high school volleyball team. It was awesome. One of my most fun jobs ever. I didn't get paid a penny. I invested money in all the system in order to make it better.
Yeah.
But I loved every second of it. And one of the reasons why I love it for her is because even if you win a set, it's best of 5, right? You got to win 3 sets out of 5, first to 3 wins. But there are sets that they would regularly win 25-23. So even in the sets that they win, they still lost 23 times and had to bounce back immediately. Volleyball's fast, right? And so I think knowing Roger Federer, again, similar to like the Beatles, one of the greatest of all time, still lost a lot and was an expert at bouncing back to failure. What's Scottie Scheffler, number 1 player in the world? What's he really good at? They have this stat that of when you bogey a hole, who is the best on tour at birdieing the next hole? And Scottie Scheffler's number 1 on that list. And so no wonder he's a number 1 player in the world, or no wonder Federer is one of the greatest of all times. They're experts. They got really good at losing and then immediately bouncing back. Yeah. And so I think that's, again, a great metaphor for life, that you're going to get beat down, you're going to mess up, you're going to face adversity. The difference between the ones who stack days and put a positive dent in the world and the ones who don't are the ones who are going to be best at bouncing back quickly, right? The stimulus plus response, right? There's that buffer. This is Viktor Frankl stuff, right? There's a stimulus, and then it's your response. It's creating that buffer so that when you respond with positive intention, a positive attitude, an optimism, a belief, as opposed to complaining or whining or being a victim, right? And I think that's, again, the difference between the ones who are making it happen and the ones who are not.
Well, it takes faith, persistence, all those things. You write about actor Morgan Freeman, one of the great actors with one of the greatest voices. And he talks about his 30-year overnight success. You know, he spent, as you write, decades in small roles while his peers were accumulating houses and retirement accounts. He persisted. He stuck it out. So what does it take for somebody to do that? Just more of what you just talked about, I assume.
Well, I mean, yeah, again, I didn't know that story about him. So this is why, again, writing a book and doing research is helpful. You just assume this guy was a movie star his whole life because we see him in Shawshank Redemption and other things. You hear that voice and you make these assumptions about people. And yet, this is a guy who I think is a great example of just staying in the game. You cannot win games if you quit. You can't win games if you stop playing. And so whatever the thing is, it's this, like, you know, community theater and stuff where he wasn't making any money, but just barely enough to keep going, but he stayed in the game.
Right.
And I have this now canned kind of response to people who are starting a podcast or trying to get going with a podcast. You know, I remember people who helped me in the early days, so I try to be helpful when people are starting podcasts or sometimes writing a book. And the very last line of that email that I send to everybody is, don't quit, everybody does. Because you have no chance to succeed or to win, and whatever your definition of winning is, you have no chance to do that if you quit. And that sounds like the most basic advice of all time. But yet, It's so true. And yet, of all those hundreds of people I've helped start podcasts and launch them and go, I don't know, 95% of them have quit because it's hard. They're not getting the audience they wanted. It's not growing like they thought. They can't get the guests or whatever. There's a various myriad of reasons as to why people quit, but everyone has good excuses for it. And so the Morgan Freeman, again, it's another inspiring story of how does he win? He stayed in the game. So whatever the thing is, if you love it, if you want to do it, if you're obsessed with it, if you want to chase down that curiosity and obsession with great rigor, you got to stay in the game. If you don't, you have no chance of winning the game. And so I hope that that's a story that inspires people to keep sticking with it, even when it gets really, really hard, because it's guaranteed it's going to, but how are you going to respond when it does? And that's going to be the biggest difference.
Makes me think of my marriage. I'm sure glad I stayed in the game or I wouldn't have married the girl of my dreams.
What happened? What do you mean? Tell me more about that.
Let's just say it was love at first sight on the part of one of us. I'll let you speculate on that. But we're coming up on 60 years, so something worked.
What's the key to 60 years of marriage?
I think it may have started with one conversation we had just before we were married. I said something to her like, honey, you are very smart, and she is. And I said, and you have an opinion on just about everything. And I didn't just fall off a turnip truck. I have a few opinions too. I think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to disagree on some things. Let's decide right now, how are we going to argue? And we talked about that, and we came up with this idea that, okay, we will listen with the intent to understand rather than to prepare our rebuttal. We will ask questions and sincerely want to know. We will do our best to understand the perspective of the other and assume the best in the other. And I think that one conversation has served us very well over the years. We are very happy.
Wow. That's wild that you had the foresight to have that conversation. Now, the execution is a whole nother part of that, though. You feel like you've both executed well on that.
I think so. I think she would say so. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I was going to say, like, I'm always curious about that and how you do that. That sounds really good. I won't hijack this anymore, but I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, somebody one time when they met her, they said to me, boy, you really married up. And she said, no, don't say that. That says that I married down. And I don't like that. So
I like that. I like that. Yeah. Well, it's good if both people view like the other one as I married up in a way. If you ask both people, they both say that. I feel like maybe that's the key somehow too. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
love it.
It's great that we're happy.
Yes. Yes. Love that.
Well, now, Ryan, you talk about the price of casual.
Yeah.
I love that. How small compromises compound into lost potential. What are the most common ways you see leaders being accidentally casual about what matters most without realizing it?
Well, I mean, probably just focusing or not focusing on what's most important or on the main thing or trying to do too many different things. So I think understanding what that is, in my case, like understanding that my podcast is the foundation for my entire business. And so nothing when it comes to work will ever be more important than preparing for that, than the guest acquisitions that I do, and then the actual execution of it, and then the marketing and promotion of it afterwards. That will never not be my number one focus. There's a flywheel spinning business-wise for me, and it all is because of that. And so I think the people make the mistake of something goes well, and then you add another thing or another thing. And I think growth is good, and you should look to find ways to grow. But the problem is when you get spread too thin because these opportunities make their way to you, and then you lose focus on what the main thing was that got you there. And so whatever that is for each of the individuals is what is that thing. It doesn't mean you don't grow. It doesn't mean you don't expand. I absolutely think you should, but also not ever losing sight of what the main thing is and focusing on getting better at that at all times. The dabbling thing came from Ed Lattimore. When we were in Scottsdale, I was hosting my Learning Leader Growth Summit with all my Leadership Circle members, and Ed comes in there, and I asked, he talked about beefing up his obituary, and I thought that was a really cool way of, just a cool way of like trying to like live a cool life. He's like, I'm trying to beef up my obituary. And I said, how do you beef up your obituary? He said, because I don't dabble. What do you mean? He's like, well, if you just dabble in a bunch of little stuff, like you never do anything. You got to like commit to stuff. We're in a world where people don't want to make commitments, like marrying somebody and being with them for 60 years, right, Roger? Like that's a commitment. You're not dabbling when it comes to dating and relationships. You're dating your wife, right? But you're committed to that. You're not dabbling. And I think if you want to put a dent in the world, a positive dent in the world, you make choices and you commit. And then you go hard for a long time. That's the only way this works. I just haven't seen examples of people where they just kind of like stumbled into something and didn't commit, but just dabbled in a bunch of things and all of it worked. It just doesn't seem to work that way. It's you found something, you made a commitment, again, work-wise, business-wise, relationship-wise, you made a commitment and you didn't dabble. You got after it consistently, day after day, for a really long period of time.
Right.
And when that happens, again, I like your odds of you living a fulfilling, rich life of the things that you want to do. So where I think the problem is people is just, they just dabble in a bunch of stuff and they don't focus. And when they do that, they look around wondering why nothing's really working. It's because you haven't really made a commitment to anything. And if you don't commit to anything, then how can you expect to get these big results without all of the work necessary to make it happen?
It reminds me of what my friend Stephen Covey used to say. He said he was determined to live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy.
Love it.
That was his focus.
Did you work with him?
Very closely. I knew him for 50 years.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. What was that like?
Well, it was wonderful. I knew him before he was famous. We were both on the faculty at Brigham Young University, and he was a young professor, as I was. And he would go out and test drive his ideas, give talks and kind of test drive them. And for example, habit 4 of the 7 habits, which is, one of the colossally successful books, is think win-win. Well, early on, it was win-win. And he decided, I'm going to add the word think because it's important to have the intellectual and even spiritual orientation to investing as much energy in the other person's win as your own. Because if you don't, it will become lose-win and then lose-lose. And, it was interesting to talk with him as all of that evolved.
Wow.
And just a wonderful man. And his son, Stephen M.R. Covey, is a close friend. He wrote the foreword to one of my books. He's chip off the old block.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. You probably have stories for days when it comes to that stuff, huh?
I have a few stories. I do.
You were with him before 7 Habits?
Yes.
Talk about a lot. Did the book hit right away, or has it taken time? I don't like. Was it a immediate success or no?
Yeah, it was pretty much an immediate success. He had a training program called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Before the book?
Yeah, which for its day was very high tech. It had VHS videos, very, very well done videos, and all sorts of collateral for the workshops. And this is back when we did workshops. You'd get a couple of dozen people in a room for 3 days. It's hard to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And then the book came out, I believe it was 1989, and it was a significant success pretty fast.
Wow.
It got real traction.
How did that change him at all? Or, his life changed, I assume, but like, how did he respond to that? Because you knowing him before that versus after that.
Didn't change him at all, as far as I can tell. One of my favorite stories about him, and I wasn't there, but I heard about it from his family. He was sitting at the kitchen table on an important phone call with some client, and, he was bald, totally bald, like Yul Brynner. And while he was on the phone call, one of his children put peanut butter and jelly on his head. And Stephen just sat there allowing it to happen while he talked with this client on the phone. So that seems pretty down to earth to me.
Yeah. I love those stories, man. That's really cool. Isn't it cool when like great things happen with great people? That's when the world right now, like James Clear is feeling that with Atomic Habits, it's selling like 7 Habits. And James, he's an Ohio guy here too. And he's just one of the greatest humans on the planet. And so it's so nice. It's so enjoyable to see great things happen to great people. It's so easy to cheer people, like I'm sure for you, for him, Covey, and for me, James Clear, seeing him grow this. It's like, yeah, this is great. The world is just, it's doing what it should be doing when great things are happening for great people.
Yeah. He was great. And as you know, it's a wonderful blessing to be around somebody like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I miss him. A lot of people miss him.
Yeah.
But his work carries on. His legacy carries on. And that's
For sure.
what he was hoping for, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Well, Ryan, you write about blinkers, the racehorses' leather blinders that narrow their view to the track ahead. What are your own blinkers? What do you intentionally refuse to look at? And how did you decide what deserved to be tuned out?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the podcast because I think this is, once a podcast hits and like goes well, you get pitched all these different ideas for creating more shows, creating a podcast network of all the different things that you could do, or like even turning it into more different video stuff. To me, I've tried to just be narrowly focused on the people that are a part of it, the preparation that it takes to be really good at it, and then the production value always increasing, the quality bar always increasing, as well as then my least favorite part, but important, is then the post episode marketing stuff that has to happen with social and all of that. Sure. I know that's necessary. I don't love it, but I think it's important. Like that is the core focus in bringing people in, adding value to people's lives. That I try to have the blinkers on when it comes to, because it starts from the racehorses, right? The racehorses need to be focused on the next step on the track. And so that's why they kind of remove their peripheral vision from them so that all they can think about is the next step on the track. And so to me, I try to focus on what's the next step, what's the next step to keep growing, to keep improving, to keep raising that quality bar, and don't get too caught up in some of the, again, opportunities are cool and I'll take a look at some things, but remembering what is the main thing, how do you make that thing better and better and better, and just keep focusing on that, because everything else seems that book deals, keynote speaking, the corporate clients, all of it comes because they were a fan or they've listened to this thing for free, by the way, and it's helped them. And I think that's just something I think about it every day. I mean, when I'm thinking about guests, when I'm thinking about preparation, I'm recording this afternoon and was preparing for that one, the last final prep this morning, right? It's all about that one conversation, to do it as best as I possibly can. And that's really what it's all about. Jim Collins told a great story about his wife who won the Ironman. And she said, what is winning, right? Well, winning in her case, she actually won. She did beat everybody else, but that's not actually how she defined winning. Winning was when she crossed the finish line, knowing she could not have run one step faster. I love that definition of winning. When she finished the Ironman, she literally said, I could not have run one step faster. So again, that's a metaphor, but how do you take that metaphor to whatever it is you're doing? I could not have prepared any harder for that. I could not have been any more present for that. I could not have been any more curious for that conversation or fascinated by that person, their story. That is like, I think of those things and I show up to the main thing of what I'm doing is how can I give like everything I've got to this thing, be maximally present and not be able to go one step faster or one step better. And doing it that way, I don't know, it's helpful for me to be as prepared and as present as possible for the thing that I'm doing.
You write about Maria Montessori, and I love her work. All of our children went to Montessori school.
Really?
People ask, why do you send them to Montessori school? And we said, we want them to learn how to learn. Yeah. And I think that's what was accomplished there. Well, anyway, Maria Montessori went into a Rome daycare expecting to teach the children, and instead the children taught her everything she thought she knew was wrong. When have you been most surprised by learning from the people you were supposed to be teaching?
I think this happens, I don't know if you probably feel the same way, but this happens to me as a dad, like every day. One of the best things about being a dad, I mean, there's a million great things about being a dad, but one of them that I think that selfishly like helps me in my career is, well, first, they keep me very, very humble. None of them are impressed at all with anything I've ever done.
Yeah, you're just dad.
Yeah, well, you're the person to make fun of. Yeah, you're the person that is always doing it wrong or tries to participate in TikTok dances and looks stupid or isn't coordinated or whatever. I think I learned from them. I just talked to Austin Kleon about this. His new book called Don't Call It Art is great because his kids aren't like, they don't view it as art. They're just drawing stuff. They're just doing things. And so he learned to kind of stay more loose by watching his kids. And I think I feel the same way about, I just like the elements of being a dad, of just trying to be curious, of trying to listen. You learn so much about the future. You learn about children. You learn about how they view the world, about things that are so much different. When you think as a parent, like, well, my job is to teach. My job is to impart all of this great wisdom on them, when really that's not how it goes. I think the best way you teach is by being the model of what you want them to be, living out your core values and your purpose, treating their mom with love and respect and gratitude every single day, but then learning from them of really what the world looks like from their eyes, of the challenges they deal with, of what it's like to grow up on social media, and the fact that we can hate that all we want, but it's also a big part of their social lives. Like, there's so much that I've learned from this role of being a dad, trying to be present, trying to not be this authoritarian, but also like a listener and a curious person with an open mind, even if they're doing things that I don't necessarily love or agree with, right? I think that's probably the first thing I thought of when you brought that up, of when I thought I was supposed to be the teacher and really I'm more of a student.
It reminds me of when our son, who's now in his 50s, turned 16. I said, big 16-year-old, let me tell you what it was like when I was 16. And I saw his eyes start to glaze over. And then I stopped myself and I said, I'm sure it's a lot different today. What's it like for you to be 16? And he looked at me like, Dad, is this one of those consulting questions? You have a flip chart? And he realized I really wanted to know. And he just poured his heart out.
Wow.
And he still talks to us a lot. He's a diplomat with the State Department. He lives in Indonesia, and he calls us faithfully every week.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Indonesia? How did he get?
Well, they've been in China. They've been in Africa twice. They lived in Florence, Italy for 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
We spent 5 weeks with them in Florence. You can take Florence for 5 weeks. It's okay. There's good gelato there.
That's so cool. What a good question, though. What a good reframe.
Yeah, what's it like for you? It must be different.
Well, and it's so open-ended, too, right? You could take that anywhere. It's amazing what can happen if you're willing just to ask a question and listen.
And just listen.
Then maybe ask a follow-up question based on something they said. You can get to so many places if you showed up to conversations with a curiosity to ask a question and then thinking, I guarantee you they're going to say something within their answer. This goes for any person, but it's even cooler with your kids. But they're going to say something where you're going, wow, really? And then that leads to a follow-up question, which then you keep going and you keep going. Like, to me, that's the juice of life. That is so much fun to have those types of conversations where you just pose a simple question, but it's open-ended enough to where they could take it anywhere. And then you just ask a follow-up and then maybe another one and another one. And before you know it, like, you're learning a ton about this person,
And I think one of the keys to listening is don't be too quick to jump in with the next question.
Yep.
Wait a few seconds and they'll often elaborate.
So true. So true. It's hard. It's a harder skill to develop and to execute on, but you're right. It's so true.
I have a lot of fun with my grandchildren and now my great-grandchildren.
You have great-grandchildren?
I do.
Oh, my goodness.
Who are getting big enough to have really good conversations with. I mean, even the youngest, a 4-year-old. Wow. I can have great conversations with her.
I bet she loves that. That's so cool.
She's fun.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, the central argument of your latest book is that the price of becoming is never paid in full. It's a daily payment, often invisible, often made when no one is watching. After all of the research you've done and all those hundreds of interviews with impactful leaders, what has surprised you most about what that price actually requires?
Well, I think it's part of the fun is it never, ever ends, ever. Until your last day. Like, it just never ends. I love that. I think that's fun. That's Andrew Brandt told me he has this mindset of never peak, right? Certain people say, I got to peak for this or get ready for this race or whatever. And he does races all the time, like triathlons. No, I'm never peaking. I don't want to ever peak. I want to always be kind of ascending a little bit. And I think like realizing that that's how it is is inspirational. It's exciting. It's motivating. The JJ Redick never arrived, always becoming mindset. No matter what happens or what you accomplish, there's no moment of arrival, no matter what. It's always becoming ethos and always becoming mindset. And so I think that's really, when you study some of the most impactful people in history, which obviously you've done, you've been like friends with them, you know that this is how they approach the world. They don't have this, well, I've made it, I'm just going to sit back and do nothing, right? You could easily do that. And what are you doing? You're out here like interviewing and learning from people because you're curious and you want to get better and you want to improve. That's super inspiring. I want to be around other people like that. I'm striving to be like that, of having a never arrived, always becoming mindset, because getting a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better gives you more opportunities to meet fascinating people like you and leave a positive dent in the world. And if you're here, you might as well, like, that's what I've said. If like you're here and you're going to do it, you get one shot at it. I want to try to leave a positive dent and hopefully help people and impact them in a positive way and hopefully raise standards and value excellence and get after it each day. I think that's just a more fun way to go about it. But yeah, man, I think that's the biggest learning for me, is there's no moment of arrival. It's an always becoming mindset.
Well, you and I are birds of a feather, I think. Somebody asked me a while back, why do you do that podcast? And I said, hey, I get to talk with smart people. Yep. What's the downside of that?
It's the best, man. I'm with you. Same way. 11 years is my favorite thing in the world to do. Prep for it, do it. All of it. Like, meet incredible people who live wild lives and are living wild lives and getting after it. I'm just deeply attracted to people like that and want to be in those people's orbits. I don't love being around people who are just okay to exist. I want people who are in it, like getting after it. Like, that's just a lot more fun. It's messy at times. That's life, and then we're going to keep going. So I don't know, man. I appreciate you having me. I love 60 years. That's so cool. I think that's incredible.
Well, one final question, Ryan. Among the elite performers, why is humility so often the common denominator?
I think it's one of the skills developed by people, because like, it's hard to be curious if you're not humble. I think those go hand in hand. And from what I've seen, some of the best are the most curious people to ask. Look what you're doing, right? You've acquired a ton of knowledge. You could just sit there and be writing books and be giving speeches, but instead you're still curious enough to learn from others who have lived different lives and different experiences from you. That is not surprising, given all that you've done and accomplished. And so to me, this deadly combo of being humble and curious opens your mind to learn, opens up opportunities for you to grow and to improve. I worked for a boss at one point who was not curious at all and had no humility. Just ask him. He had all the answers. He knew everything.
No fun.
He was the worst, right? And I'm sure he did fine in his career, but he was not a good leader and was not a good developer of other leaders, which is what senior leaders at corporate America need to be doing, because there's no curiosity and no humility at all. And that probably stemmed from some weird insecurity from earlier. It's like, I don't know. I try to not be judgmental, but it's still upsetting when you work with people like that. So yeah, I mean, but if you look at a commonality among those who have sustained excellence over time, curiosity and humility are at the top of that list. And so again, I think those are skills you can develop, and some are more encoded for it than others, but still skills that we can all develop. And I'm trying to develop them myself as well.
Well, Ryan Hawk, thank you so much for joining us on Leadership. Ryan says the price of becoming is never paid in full. That's not a warning. That's the good news. It means there's no moment when it's too late to start. There's no finish line you missed. There's just today and the quiet, boring, unglamorous choice to get a little better. What I keep thinking about is what Ryan said about the most impactful people he's met. They don't believe in making it. They've internalized that there is no final destination, just the next challenge. That's a radical idea in a culture that sells arrival. But Ryan's message is really a love letter to the journey itself, to the process, the discipline, the discomfort, and the compound interest of becoming someone worth following. Ryan's book is titled The Price of Becoming. To learn more about Ryan and his work, go to learningleader.com. Share this episode with your friends and associates. Be sure to leave a review of our podcast. Even a single sentence fuels the algorithms that promote the great content that the Leadership podcast provides. And for free resources to help you in your leadership journey, go to leadershop.net. That's leadershop.net. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and spread good cheer wherever you go. For Leadership, I'm Roger Dean Duncan.